in Tahiti was special. People are very connected to the land. People are very connected to the ocean because a lot of people, that's where they get their food from. Tell you the truth, I'm just like majority of the population out there. I was before this trip. Just heard about the little fire ant, but that was about it. And without really being conscious of the danger that it represents.
Ici à Tahiti, nous avons donc identifié près de 78 zones, représentent en gros 740 hectares. La commune la plus infestée, c'est Mahina, mais Punavia est la deuxième commune la plus infestée. Et rien qu'avec ces deux extrémités de l'agglomération urbaine, il y a beaucoup d'échanges qui font que ça s'étend. Aujourd'hui, pour nous, c'est difficile. On n'est pas nombreux à travailler dessus, mais...
The presence of this ant here has far-reaching consequences on many different levels. Some invading species may only affect the environment, but for the little fire ant, it really has impact on the human well-being. It can have impact on veterinary aspects by biting and stinging animals, and also has a clear impact on the environment. So very different impact at different levels.
With a typical ant colony, the queen, of course, is the most important part of the colony. And although she can live for a very long time, she will eventually die. And when that happens, that colony is going to expire as well. LFA, in common with a lot of other invasive ant species, tends to have a lot of queens in the same colony. It means that it's much more difficult for us to deal with them. And those queens will stay with that parent colony or walk away a few feet or a few yards with some workers and start a little satellite colony, a little satellite village that's still connected to the main colony. And we would call that a super colony. As we're working in our food gardens or harvesting fruit or whatever it is that we're doing outside, we've got little ants living above us, and for an arboreal species, for a species that like to live in trees, they're not actually very good at hanging on. So even a small bump to vegetation will result in a rain of these little ants falling down, and that's when the trouble starts for us, I guess. They'll get caught up in our clothes and becoming alarmed will start to sting us.
It is the most populated island in French Polynesia, but it is also the biggest one, and with the tallest peaks and mountains, so it has the richest biodiversity in French Polynesia. We've got about 850 native plants, including 550 endemics. The little fire ant is attacking native insects, mollusks, but also vertebrates such as birds, for instance. Well, if the little fire ant is able to spread naturally in those areas, the high elevation areas, or if some colonies are accidentally moved to those higher elevation areas, it will be an ecological disaster.
I was coming back home by evening, and Wasmania is one of the teeniest ants. I didn't saw it for 2 years. I suspected some kind of allergy. Once I knew, I understood they were everywhere. I learned how to recognize it very quickly, and I checked so my house. They were in the home, on the roof, in the bathroom, in the room, on the bed. They were everywhere. At start she was loving to go in the bush. Now she stay home. She fears to go out without me. She is blind.
Et on te pique assez souvent?
Ah oui,
Yes. Tous les jours?
tous les jours.
Every
alors,
day. C'est la seule famille qui habite ici de ce côté-ci?
non, j'ai un tonton encore qui est à Alta et l'autre côté c'est mon cousin, mais il n'y a plus personne. Hein. Sinon, ben, beaucoup de gens quittent les terrains, hein. L'autre côté, eux, ils sont partis, l'autre côté, mon cousin, il vient plus, tout est abandonné, c'est à cause des fourmis.
Oh.
Là, on plante, c'est pour faire joli, hein, parce qu'eux, ils donnent pas aussi le mât, parce que par en dessous,
C'est
ouais, les fourmis, ils rentrent dans les tarouas, dans les tarots, quand tu touches, c'est où, c'est que des fourmis.
Et aïe.
Ah ouais.
Dans le taureau aussi, et le taureau?
Oui, on
Et
n'a
t'as-
plus rien, c'est pas la peine de... Mais bon, ça on plante parce qu'on a envie de bouger, quoi.
Yeah.
De l'autre côté, on a un phare pour oiseaux paradis et tout, on n'y va même plus.
Non.
Ça y est, on fait des trucs havarés, hein, alors
Yeah,
qu'on
she
habite
has
dans
to
la
make.
nature.
Yeah, she can't use real flowers anymore, so she has
Tiens,
to
tiens.
make fake flowers.
Allez. Voilà, c'est ça mon travail maintenant.
Ah,
Hein.
tu les bouquets avec elle.
Ouais.
Attention.
Avec du fil de fer. Aussi.
Ouais.
Little fire ants, like a lot of invasive ant species, are very good farmers. And they farm a group of insects broadly called homopterous. That's scale insects, mealybugs, whiteflies, aphids, those sort of insects. And those insects secrete a sugary substance that the ants use as a source of energy. Ants and actually ranch them extremely well, extremely efficiently. And that causes a big reduction in plant health. And that decline in health could result in quite substantial crop losses. I know in one outstanding case in Papua New Guinea, the local villagers were growing cacao as an understory crop in the rainforest. And they'd noticed that since fire ants arrived, their monthly cocoa check had halved. So their productivity had declined by 50%.
I don't know. I don't know what you want to do. Tero ti oni no tero. I think tero had about what tero to ho vai ba what man.
So they say the ant has been here for 6 years and he's been able to contain it right on his property and trying to find a way to get rid of it.
Tao va por mo ma o me te tero do por ma te me fe ino.
Pauru. Pauru. Ai ai.
If he didn't put the product, he would have it. He would have it. No crop. He would have nothing. He would have no crop. Nothing to sell.
The sad parts of this problem is that if you've got money, you can actually do something about the problem. If you've got access to chemicals or baits or sprays, whether they're being used correctly or not, then the problem to you is simply an economic one. But for people that live a subsistence lifestyle, that live, very firmly connected with the land, that produce most of their own food and the things that they need from their own land, quite often they don't have cash. Their access to folding money is very limited, and they have to suffer the crop losses or the economic losses or the production losses, and there's not a lot that they can do about it. You look on the other hand at an expensive resort that has an ant problem, well, they'll pay somebody to come and fix it for them, and there are a whole lot of people in the Pacific that simply don't have access to the products, the money or the methodologies to actually kind of manage their pest problems. Pacific's an extraordinary place. A lot of people look at an atlas and see the Pacific as being this big blue blob between Australia and America. And it's filled with little islands. And when a new pest or a disease enters the Pacific, it's very easy for it to spread from island to island, just with everyday traffic, in ways that defy control by quarantine agencies, because quarantine agencies are defending these arbitrary boundaries, whereas what we call the grey trade, or the everyday movement of people, doesn't always follow those lines. So once a pest gets into the region, it's very easy for it to spread very quickly through the entire region. So what happens to us threatens what happens to other nations. And in this case, it's probably the reverse. What's happened in other Pacific nations has now happened to us. And so we really need to address these problems whenever we can as a collective on a regional level and try to defend our regional borders from these sort of problems.
We can focus on our own islands. We can, as occurred on Maui, you can eradicate one population, but because we're so connected by history, by culture, by transportation, if we don't address it on a Pacific-wide scale, we will ultimately fail, and we'll fail on a whole lot of levels, not just our own personal quality of life, not just our own biodiversity, our own native plants and animals, but we'll fail in terms of our need to be connected, our need to be aware of that what happens in one place affects other people and other places in the Pacific. Because our islands are connected, you have to have real, meaningful, ongoing inspection, detection, reporting capabilities, because without that we will get it. It will become established and it will spread in the Pacific. And that's why it's so important for people everywhere to become aware of what it looks like, what it does, how to report it, and to demand the tools and the resources to address it when it does become established in a new area.